Revealed, the incredible story of an unknown bride saved by a lonely duke after 11 years of heartbreak. Ella stood behind the counter of the Harmony Springs Cafe, her hands busy stacking plates while her heart felt like it was crumbling. At 32, she felt like a ghost who passed unnoticed through life, barely keeping her head above water. The flickering neon sign offered greetings to the happy diners, while Ella juggled 2 jobs and the care of her ailing mother. "Mama," she whispered under her breath as she recalled the woman who once held her up, now needing support herself. And then, there was 10-year-old Lily, her vibrant laughter enough to make the sun shine even on the stormiest days that in this quaint town. Everyone seemed to stumble through life perfectly. Ella couldn't shake off the feeling of being the unknown bride, always on the sidelines of her own existence. Still, when church gatherings unfolded like magic on Wednesday nights, their potlucks blossoming into laughter, she clung to each slice of connection that her community offered. "You got this, Ella," she'd tell herself, but the weight of solitude pressed heavily on her chest. Meanwhile, Duke Alexander wandered through gala events, an émigré of wealth who felt poorer than most. His perfectly tailored suit hugged a body burdened with loss. It was no longer excellence he craved, but a simple touch of warmth, a real smile, a hand to hold. Silently, he wished to shed his isolation, to find assurance that life still had meaning amidst his gilded cage. Then one night, the sky darkened, an ominous blanket unfurling over Harmony Springs. A storm surged violently, howling winds whipping through alleys. Ella caught her breath as her home, her cherished sanctuary, trembled with the forces of nature. "Not now," she muttered, clutching Lily to her, both of them staring out the window. Fear clutched at her heart like icy fingers curling around a fragile parse that in the distance. Duke watched the storm unfold from his expansive estate. A decision tugged at his heart. He couldn't just watch his town suffer, he needed to step outside his walls. He roared to life, opening the car door and stepping into the chaos like a knight unafraid. Little did he know that the heart he sought to warm belonged to Ella. Back at the cafe, winds roared louder than the voices of frightened townspeople. Ella's pride fought fiercely as the storm raged, but desperation clawed at her soul. Just as hope began to fade, pounding echoed at the cafe door. The Duke had arrived, soaked but determined. "I'm here to help," he declared, his eyes earnest, full of unspoken understanding. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the following hours, as flooding threatened rooftops, an unexpected camaraderie formed. Ella's strength finding acknowledgement, while Duke learned humility's sweet grace. Tensions ran high, whispers of discontent danced through the community, challenging every perceived divide. But as the storm morphed into a tempest of personal fears, both must confront the tremors of their hearts. Could the unknown bride and the lonely Duke forge a bond that transcended their worlds? Or would they find themselves swept away by the flood, leaving only questions and hopes behind? In a whirlwind of emotions, as they braced against their storm, everything was on the line. The cafe hummed with an odd mix of tension and determination as Ella and Duke worked side by side, preparing for the worst. Ella's hands moved swiftly, wiping surfaces and stacking stools, while Duke filled buckets with sand, his strong back to the community as he faced the raging storm outside. "Ella, we need to secure those windows," he called out, adjusting his collar against the chill his wet clothes could not ward off. "I know, just give me a second." She shot back, her voice rising above the cacophony of wind and rain. What was he doing here? Why did he care? Yet, as she watched him, something flickered in her chest. In a town where she felt invisible, he seemed to see her, truly see her. The door swung open, a gust of wind following it in like an uninvited guest. It was Mr. Henderson, the local grocer, his face pale and eyes frantic. "Ella!" The water's already halfway up Main Street. We need to evacuate. His words cut through the chaos, sharpening the reality of their situation. Duke turned to her, searching her face for a hint of fear. We can't leave yet. We have to look after the people who can't help themselves, he said, his voice steady, yet tinged with urgency. Ella nodded, but a part of her shrank at the thought of facing more chaos. They had to be brave, not just for themselves, but for everyone who relied on her strength. As they made their way to the back door, Duke gripped her shoulder. Come on, he urged. Let us get everyone into the cafe and make sure they're safe. He guided her back into the fray. It was chaotic, chaos wrapped in water and fear. The streets of Harmony Springs, usually a picturesque scene, were transformed into torrents of frenzy. Townspeople moved hurriedly, faces etched with worry. But Duke was a beacon amidst the swirling darkness. With each step he took, Ella felt a strange surge of courage. The community hadn't just found its leader, they found a partner, someone to share their weight. Together they pulled in families who were shivering and urged the elderly to nestle in close. The cafe quickly filled with life, laughter, and whispered prayers, all sheltered under its roof. Once the last person was inside, Ella surveyed the crowd. They were huddled together, some already exchanging stories of old, comforted by the familiar atmosphere. Ella suddenly felt like she wasn't just the unknown bride, she was part of a larger tapestry linking each of these souls together. As the rain battered the windows, the mood shifted from fear to gratitude. Duke walked over to Ella, his brow furrowed as he noticed her resolve crumbling. You're doing an incredible job, he said softly, his eyes locked on hers. We all are. But what if we lose everything? Ella's voice trembled, revealing the cracks in her facade. We won, Duke assured her, his grip on her hand gentle but firm. We'll get through this together. With his commitment offering a glimmer of hope, Ella breathed a little easier. But deep inside, a lingering worry stirred. What did together truly mean? As she stared into those deep, unwavering eyes, questions surged. Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside, causing everyone to jump, and darkness loomed over them again. What awaited them beyond the cafe? Would they face the aftermath united, or would the floodwaters take more than just their homes? Ella's heart raced as the storm raged on, and she felt Duke's hand tighten around hers, grounding her amidst the chaos. In that moment, she knew they were on the edge of something profound, but what? The crash that echoed through the cafe felt like a warning shot, jolting everyone into silence. For a heartbeat, the storm outside receded, replaced by a tense stillness inside. Eyes darted around, searching for reassurance, and Ella felt the weight of their stares pressing down on her. Duke broke the quiet. Stay close, he said, his tone commanding, but his gaze warm and protective as he scanned the room. We need to stay calm. Everyone, take a seat. He moved toward the windows, pulling the heavy curtains shut to block out the chaos. Ella followed, her heart still racing. She knew the storm was battering harder now, but just as they settled, the lights flickered and then went out completely, plunging the cafe into darkness. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ella swayed on her feet, gripping the edge of a table to steady herself. The fear that had been bubbling beneath the surface rushed forth. Duke was there, a solid presence beside her. We're okay, he said, his voice low and steady. It's just the storm. We've got each other. His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Ella took a deep breath, trying to anchor herself to his steady strength. But what if it gets worse? She struggled to keep her voice from trembling, aware of the rising panic in the room. We prepare for the worst but hope for the best, he replied, his eyes shining in the dim light. Remember why we're here. We're not alone in this. She nodded slowly, allowing his words to penetrate her worry. The cafe might be dim, but it still buzzed with the energy of togetherness. Families were huddled close, whispering reassurances to one another. The elderly even cracked jokes to lighten the heavy atmosphere. Ella could feel the flicker of hope amidst the dread. suddenly, a loud thud shook the building, causing everyone to jump. Ella felt her pulse quicken as fear seeped back in. What was that? A voice cried out from the back. It's just the storm, Duke said again, his calmness like a bomb. Let us move to where we can see each other better. He guided them to the center of the cafe, gathering everyone into a tighter circle. As Ella took her place at Duke's side, she could hear the others murmuring, stories tumbling out as they shared memories of previous storms, laughter cracking like thunder beneath the weight of anxiety. A small child in the corner clutched a stuffed bear, and Ella's heart twisted. We can do this, she whispered to herself, finding the resolve in Duke's presence. Then something shifted in Duke's expression, a glance that offered unspoken comfort. You're the heart of this community, he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. Lead them. They need you now. Those words struck a chord deep within her. Ella took a step forward, summoning all her courage. Everyone, she called, her voice rising above the din. We're in this together. Let us share stories, sing songs, and remind each other why we're strong. We're not just fighting a storm. We're fighting for each other. Cheers erupted, filling the air with hope. Ella felt a surge of warmth wash over her. You could see it the way the townsfolk drew closer, the fear dissipating amid laughter and shared stories. Suddenly, another crash broke through, louder and more powerful. The cafe trembled slightly as the windows rattled in their frames. Ella's heart dropped, and she felt a familiar surge of panic, but this time, Duke's hand reached over, squeezing hers. Stay with me, he whispered, those deep eyes holding hers steady. All around them, uncertainty loomed, but Ella felt something shifting inside her. What if we lose everything? She had asked earlier, but now she realized that their strength was in their togetherness. They might lose their houses, their possessions, but their spirits remained unbroken. Just as she summoned the courage to speak again, a desperate voice pierced the air. Help! Someone's trapped outside. Ella's heart lurched. Would they take the risk? Would they face the chaos together? Every answer felt like a leap into the unknown, suffused with worry yet buoyed by determination, but... As she turned to Duke, the choice etched on his face, Ella knew they were about to take that leap. Would it cost them everything? The tension in the cafe surged as the voice called out for help, a cry swallowed by the howling wind outside. Ella looked at Duke, who stood tall, his expression hardened with resolve. We can't leave someone out there, he said, determination pouring from his every word. Are we really going to do this? Ella asked hesitantly, glancing towards the darkened windows where the storm raged violently. The thought of facing the elements sent a shiver through her, but Duke, unwavering, looked at her with intense sincerity. They're counting on us, he replied. There was a flicker of fear in his eyes, but it was overshadowed by something stronger, courage. Ella felt that courage washing over her, igniting a fire inside. She took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Let us go together. Duke turned to the group, his broad shoulders squared. We need volunteers. Who's with us? A moment of silence followed, charged with uncertainty. Ella could see the fear etched on many faces, but then a hand shot up from the back. Mrs. Thompson, the elderly woman who had baked pies for every town gathering. I'm coming too. She called, her voice strong despite her frail frame. The dam broke, and others joined her. I'll go. Me too. Count me in. The calls echoed, voices blending into a chorus of resolve. Excitement mingled with terror, but together they were brave. Duke organized them, assigning roles for everyone who stepped forward. They seemed alive with purpose now, even in the darkness. Ella felt a wave of gratitude flood her as she looked around. This community, with all its cracks and crevices, had come alive, hands reaching out for one another. As they made their way to the door, Ella grasped Duke's hand, squeezing it tight. If we don't come back, he silenced her with a firm look. We will. Together. With one last glance back at the sea of hopeful faces behind them, they stepped outside into the chaos. The wind whipped at them, fierce and biting. Ella fought against it, but Duke held her close, guiding her through the storm. She could barely see, everything outside was a blur of rain and darkness. "Keep your eyes on me," Duke shouted over the roaring wind. They pressed onward, moving toward the last sound, following the faint cries that called out through the turmoil. Each step felt monumental, the weight of each choice anchoring them to the idea of hope. Then, they heard it again, the desperate shout for help. "This way!" Ella yelled, her heart pounding in her chest. They stumbled through the sheets of rain that felt like sharp needles against their skin until they reached a figure. A man, hunched against debris, struggling to lift a fallen beam. "Hang on!" Duke shouted, rushing to help. Ella inhaled sharply, and without thinking, she joined. Together, they pushed against the beam, straining with every ounce of strength in their bodies. The wind howled, and the storm roared, but they pressed on, fueled by the desperate need to save a life. Finally, with one last shove, the beam shifted, and the man was free. He looked up, shock evident in his face as gratitude washed over him. "Thank you. I thought I was going to," but before he could finish, a thunderous crash echoed behind them. Ella's heart dropped. They had to move fast. As the storm raged on, she felt Duke grab her arm, urgency in his grip. "Say what you want to," he began, but suddenly, the ground beneath them groaned ominously. In that heartbeat, Ella realized the storm wasn't the only danger. They needed to act quickly, or the price of their courage might be higher than they had imagined. "Run!" Duke shouted, urging everyone to safety. Ella's legs pounded against the earth, adrenaline coursing through her body, but the storm had only just begun to reveal its fury. As they hurriedly made their way back, her heart raced not just with fear but a dawning understanding of the strength that lay within them all, a strength she had never realized existed. Would they escape the storm unscathed? And what words would shape the very foundations of their courage when faced with the unknown? They ran as if the storm itself was snapping at their heels, a monstrous beast intent on devouring them whole. The wind howled in a maddening symphony as rain lashed against their skin, a relentless reminder of the chaos surrounding them. Duke held Ella's hand tightly, their fingers intertwined like lifelines in this turmoil. "Keep going," he urged, his breath visible in the cold air, fierce determination etched on his face. Ella's heart pounded, not only with fear but with the warmth of his unwavering courage. They pushed forward, darting around obstacles, ducking under unsteady branches and dodging the debris that the storm turned into makeshift projectiles. With each step, her resolve deepened. They could do this. Her body echoed Duke's strength. But as they neared safety, Ella's mind flickered back to the grateful man behind them. "What about him?" she shouted through the gale. Fear clawed at her. "Don't worry. He's right behind us," he yelled back, but even as he spoke, she could feel the hesitation in his voice. The crashing of tree limbs and the moaning of wind drowned out any assurance. She glanced over her shoulder, scanning the swirling darkness. "Stay close. Keep moving." The command came from her lips before she could second-guess herself. Those words came from somewhere deeper, fueled by the shared spirit of everyone back at the cafe. They weren't just running for their lives, they were running for each other. The man staggered forward, just steps away but slowing down. Ella's heart cracked, she couldn't leave him behind. "I have to go back." Duke's grip tightened, shaking his head. "No. It's too dangerous." Desperation surged through her. He needs help. He can't make it on his own. The thought of another person alone in this nightmare ignited a defiant spark within her. Duke's eyes softened, a silent battle raging. "Fine. But I'm going with you." Before she could respond, they broke apart, sprinting back into the darkness. The chaos was even louder now, a frenzied mix of thunder and wind. Ella felt the echo of their earlier courage running through her. There was power in sharing this burden, a promise of strength in numbers. They found the man. His face was pale, shadows of pain flickering in his eyes. You shouldn't have come back, he said, breath shallow. Get up. We're leaving. Ella shouted, urgency punctuating her voice like the rain. With a grunt, he attempted to rise, his face clouding with anguish. Ella dropped to her knees beside him, wrapping her arm around his waist. We can do this, she encouraged, her voice steady despite the tremors in her limbs. Duke mirrored her actions on the other side, lifting the man with the strength of two. As they started to move again, something changed. It felt like the storm was trying to push them back, testing their resolve. Ella inhaled deeply, feeling the warmth of Duke's presence next to her. Keep going. You're almost there. She encouraged the man as they stumbled forward, Duke leading the way once more, and then, the unexpected happened. A crack of lightning split the sky, casting an eerie glow on their path, illuminating a nearby tree that had become uprooted in the storm. Ella caught a glimpse of the destruction around them and dread settled into her stomach like a stone. Almost there. Duke urged, sensing the leaden atmosphere. Ella squeezed the man tighter against her, focusing on the rhythm of their movement. 2 steps forward, 1 shaky step back, but they wouldn't give up. Suddenly, a deafening rumble echoed from above, silencing the wind for a heartbeat. Then, with a horrifying crash, another tree fell, blocking their path. Panic surged through her as she realized they were trapped. Down! Ella shouted, and without hesitation, they all dove to the side, narrowly escaping the branches that crashed where they had stood just moments before. As the dust settled and she caught her breath, the whirlwind of fear gave way to clarity. They had to find another way in fast. Now what? Duke exhaled sharply, glancing at Ella, the question hanging heavy in the air. That uncertainty flickered in her chest, mingled with something else, a fierce desire to protect what they had just fought for. We're not giving up. We're going around, and we're getting out of this storm. With renewed determination, Ella pulled them all together, redirecting their effort. A path lay ahead, perhaps harder, but the strength of their unity sparked hope. They would navigate through, just like they had done in the cafe. As they pressed on, battling the storm's fury, she wondered if courage could be their beacon after all. But as the wind howled louder, almost mocking them, Ella pondered, would they truly emerge from this alive, or was the storm holding more than just fierce winds? Ella's breath came in sharp bursts, the storm threatening to snuff out her flame of hope. They found themselves in a small clearing, surrounded by towering trees that swayed ominously, their roots exposed like skeletal fingers clawing at the earth. The rain had turned to a relentless downpour, almost drowning out the sound of Duke's voice. Are you sure we can find a way through? He asked, forehead lined with worry. Ella felt torn. They had come so far, defying the storm's rage, yet the weight of uncertainty loomed over them. We have to try, she replied, her voice firmer than she felt. We can't stop now. The man they were helping groaned, leaning heavily against Duke. I don't know if I can go much further. Just stay with us. Duke pressed him, his voice rising over the storm. Just a little longer. Ella looked at the man, determination flaring deep within her. You've made it this far. We won't leave you. She was becoming aware of how much their survival depended on each other, each heartbeat was a promise between them. As they shuffled forward, Ella glanced up at the sky. The clouds had turned a deep shade of charcoal, rumbling like a wild beast. Shadows danced in the trees with each flash of lightning, feeding the fear creeping into her heart. Duke suddenly pointed ahead. Look! A cave! Ella squinted through the rain, barely able to make out the dark mouth of the cave carved into the hillside. It beckoned like a sanctuary, a glimmer of hope amidst the storm's fury. That could be our salvation. They pushed through the underbrush, urgency in their movements. Each step felt like a small victory. But as they approached the cave, the ground shifted beneath them. Duke lost his footing, and Ella barely caught him before he tumbled into the mud. Watch your step. She gasped. The urgency hung between them once more, the storm not relenting even for a heartbeat. They managed to help the man to the entrance of the cave, the wind howling outside like a crazed animal. Once inside, they took a moment to catch their breath, their faces pale from exertion and fear. Ella felt a scalding mix of relief and anxiety. The cave was dark and damp, the sound of raindrops pooling on stone echoing ominously. They huddled close together, Ella's heart racing as she cast quick glances at Duke and the man. "We'll wait out the worst of it here," she said, trying to keep her tone steady, even as doubt gnawed at her joy. "Is it safe?" the man asked, a tremor in his voice. "They can't get us in here," Duke reassured, his hand resting on Ella's shoulder. "We'll be fine." Ella tucked her chin down, shivering as the cold seeped into her bones. Yet, in the darkness, a flicker of warmth ignited inside her. It was the bond they had forged, the strength they drew from one another. The minute they had decided to stand together, the storm had become just a backdrop to their fight for survival. Just then, the wind outside surged with a violent roar, followed by the unthinkable a distant cracking sound. "What was that?" Ella gasped, eyes wide with terror. "Something's falling," Duke muttered, straining to listen. A new wave of panic coursed through Ella. "We need to stay under the overhang." Little did they know, outside the cave, the storm was preparing to unleash its final assault, and their fate hung in the balance. As another crash echoed from above, and the ground trembled beneath them, Ella pondered whether they had truly escaped or simply traded one danger for another. "Stay close," she whispered, clenching Duke's hand tightly and bracing for what lay ahead. But deep down, a question lingered: would their unity be enough to withstand whatever darkness was now closing in? The sound of cracking wood echoed in the distance, a sinister reminder that nature was not done with them yet. Ella's heart thundered in her chest as she stared at the cave's entrance, barely illuminated by occasional flashes of lightning. Duke's fingers tightened around her hand. "We need to stay calm," he murmured, his voice firm but tinged with concern. Ella couldn't tell if he was reassuring her or himself. The man they had rescued, still leaning heavily against the wall, turned pale. "I don't know how much longer I can." "Don't say that," Ella interrupted, her voice sharper than she intended. She softened her tone, aware of the fear in his eyes. "Just breathe. We're all here together." Moments passed in silence, the only sounds were the relentless rain and the groaning of the trees outside. Ella took a deep breath herself, recalling the flicker of warmth that had sparked inside her earlier. They had beaten the storm to the cave, hadn't they? Maybe there was still hope. "Can you tell us your name?" Ella asked, trying to shift the focus away from the chaos outside. The man shifted, visibly shaken. "It's Alex. I was hiking when this storm came out of nowhere." His voice trembled with each word, but something about saying his name seemed to lighten the weight on his shoulders. "Well, Alex, now we're all in this together." Duke nodded, the tension in his expression easing slightly. A sudden gust whipped through the entrance, kicking up dirt and debris. They flinched, huddling closer. What if something falls inside?" Duke's voice was low, and Ella could see the worry creeping back into his features. That he was right. The fissures in the cave could be a trap, ready to collapse under pressure. As if sensing their concern, the air felt heavier, saturated with an unsettling stillness momentarily broken by another sharp crack outside. This time, it was closer. With every tremor of the ground, Ella's heart sank deeper. They couldn't stay here forever. "We need to move further in," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Are you sure?" Duke asked, glancing back towards the mouth of the cave, doubt flickering in his eyes. "Staying here feels like a death sentence." "All right," he nodded, though apprehension lingered. The three of them silently agreed to push deeper into the cave, away from the impending doom that roared outside. They stepped cautiously, feet slipping in the damp darkness. A few paces in, the cave opened up, revealing an expansive chamber, the air thick and cool. Ella felt her breath catch at the sight of glimmering rocks embedded in the walls. The darkness was alive with untold secrets. Wow, Alex breathed, while momentarily breaking his panic. Let us be careful. We can't lose track of each other, Ella reminded them, though the breathtaking beauty sparked a flicker of curiosity in her heart. They ventured further, led cautiously by the dim light of Elias' phone. Each step felt like a choice, a defiance against the storm raging outside. As they reached the back of the chamber, the soft sound of water trickling echoed faintly, mixing with the distant thundering outside. A small stream trickled from the rock, a small miracle in the chaos. We can refill our bottles, Duke said, relief washing over him. Yet, just as hope surged again, they heard a low rumble that vibrated through the ground, unmistakably different from the storm. The stark realization hit them: the cave was shifting. What is happening? Alex cried, staring into the darkness. Ella held her breath, dread curling in her stomach. Suddenly, she felt trapped, surrounded by stone and shadows. With the storm raging outside and the ground trembling beneath them, did their sanctuary become their tomb? Follow me. Ella shouted, her voice breaking through the fear. They turned to escape the chamber, but before they could take a step, another crash echoed from deeper within, and a deafening crack sounded from overhead. What was that? Duke shouted, panic rising in his voice. In that moment, Ella's heart raced with the realization that they might not just be fleeing the storm, they had to escape the very cave that had offered them shelter. Would they find their way out before it was too late? The cave seemed to grow darker, the shadows inching closer as they raced back toward the entrance. Ella led the way, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. The fear around her was palpable, intertwining tightly with an undeniable sense of urgency. Go, go. She urged, glancing back to see Duke's expression morph from panic to determination. Alex followed closely, his face pale but set with a newfound resolve. They had to move faster, even if the very earth beneath them was shifting. Just as they turned the corner, a loud scraping sound echoed from above. Dust rained down on them, dancing in the faint light like a swarm of angry bees. Ella's instincts screamed for her to keep running. Each thud of her feet felt like a countdown. Is there any other way out? Duke gasped, desperation clawing at his throat. I don't know. She shouted back. We'll have to find one. Follow the stream. Alex called out, pointing to where the water trickled away into a darkened recess. Maybe it leads to the surface. There was no time to think. Ella led the way toward the stream, the trickle providing a glimmer of hope in the suffocating dark. As they moved, the ground shook violently again, and Ella stumbled. She felt Duke's hand grip her shoulder to steady her, anchoring her to a fleeting sense of safety. Ella! He shouted, pulling her with urgency. Keep moving. She urged, fighting the instinct to stop and look back. The stream wound deeper into the cave, the darkness thickening around them. A forced calm settled over her, allowing flickers of determination to ignite. They had to trust the water and its course. Suddenly, a massive rumble echoed down the tunnel, followed by the sound of rocks tumbling, like thunder rolling in an empty sky. Ella's heart raced at the thought of the entrance collapsing. She pushed harder, her legs crying out in protest. Ella! Duke's voice snapped her back. She turned. He was staring at something. What? He pointed ahead. In the faint light, she saw an opening. It was different from the rugged walls around them. It glimmered like a hidden treasure. That way. They surged toward the opening, the pulsating dread urging them further as another crash reverberated through the stone. They reached the threshold, Duke and Alex just steps behind. As they neared the opening, Ella gasped. The narrow passage twisted upward and felt cool against her skin. Hope mingled with exhilaration, but terror still gripped her as she heard the thunder erupting beyond the cave. Are you ready? Duke said, determination etched across his face. Ella nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Suddenly, the ground shook violently as a boulder crashed down behind them, sealing the dark chamber they had just fled with an ominous finality. "Run!" she shouted, propelling herself forward into the passage. They scrambled, hands scraping against the cold, uneven walls as they pushed ahead. The passage twisted like a serpent, but once again, Ella could hear the distant echo of the storm, louder now as it seethed above, almost as if it were calling to them. Just when it felt like they could go no further, the tunnel opened into a narrow ledge high above what seemed to be a cascading waterfall. Ella's heart soared and dropped simultaneously. "We have to go down there," she breathed, eyes darting to the gorge below. "But where would it lead them? We'll never survive that drop," Alex exclaimed, fear creeping back into his voice. "There's no other choice," Duke said, resolve surging in his voice. With no time for hesitation, Ella took a step back, her heart racing. They had faced so much and come this far. Was she willing to gamble it all on another leap into the unknown? Just then, a horrible crack sounded behind them, a warning that they could no longer ignore. Would they trust their instincts and leap into the void, or would fear cost them everything they had fought for? "On 3!" Ella shouted, grasping each of their arms tightly, the urgency flooding her voice. The ledge felt impossibly narrow beneath their feet, the roaring waterfall beckoning them into its depths. The world behind them was collapsing, and she could feel the weight of time pressing down on them like a weighty stone. 1, 2. Ella could barely breathe. She looked at Duke, his eyes flickered with fear but also unwavering resolve. Alex stood beside him, his face almost gray. 3. Ella yelled. In that moment, she released her grip and leaped forward, trusting she'd soar through the air before hitting the water below. Instinct propelled her body forward, but dread clung to her heart. The fall felt endless, the adrenaline surging as she plunged, splash. The cold water overwhelmed her, pulling her under as the world spun around. She kicked and fought against the current, her limbs flailing. Panic slid into her thoughts like a dark shadow, but then she felt a surge of warmth. Duke's hands grabbed her waist, dragging her back toward the surface. They broke through, gasping for air, droplets cascading down their faces. "Alex!" Ella shouted as her eyes darted through the swirling water. She searched frantically, the current pushing against them. "I'm here." Alex's voice cut through the chaos, and she turned to see him sputtering beside them. Relief washed over her like a gentle tide as they all clung together, a fragile lifeline forged in chaos. The waterfall pounded behind them, and the sound was deafening. Together, they swam toward the edge of the stream, scraping against the smooth stones that lined the banks. When they finally crawled out of the water, gasping and trembling, Ella's heart raced with exhilaration and fear. "Are we safe?" Duke asked, glancing back as the roar of the waterfall echoed in the distance, a reminder of how close they had come to being consumed. "For now," Ella panted, still trying to catch her breath. But a lingering gnawing uncertainty settled deep inside her chest. She could still feel the tremors of the earth beneath their feet. The cave wasn't done with them yet. "We have to keep moving," Ella added, looking around as damp fog curled around the trees lining the stream. Shadows loomed in the twilight, making the forest feel like an enchanted, yet ominous world just waiting to swallow them whole. As they stumbled along the bank, Ella couldn't shake her unease. They had escaped one danger, but what awaited them in the woods? Silence wrapped around them like a blanket as they pressed on, anxiety edging into the atmosphere. Minutes felt like hours as they walked, the urgency palpable. Dusk began to cloak everything in shades of gray, and Ella's thoughts flickered back to the cave. Every corner they turned, she half expected to see the darkness lurking behind her. "What if we find something worse out here?" Alex muttered, breaking the silence. His face was pale, the weight of their journey becoming evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. "There's always a risk," Duke replied, his voice steady. "But we're in this together." Suddenly, an unearthly howl pierced the air, freezing them in place. It echoed through the trees, gaining strength as it approached. Ella's heart raced anew, wild panic surging in her veins. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know, but it sounds close, Duke said, eyes wide. Ella turned to look at Alex. His breath was shallow, fear etched on his face. We need to move, she urged, her instincts screaming that they were not alone. As they hurried away from the water's edge, the howls began to multiply, filling the space with an eerie chorus. Something was out there watching, waiting. Would they uncover what lay within the shadows, or would this night lead them to a fate darker than they had ever imagined? As they stumbled through the thick forest, the echoes of primal howls spiraled into their bones. Ella's heart thumped louder than ever. The tension in the air was thick, pregnant with anxiety. Each shadow felt alive, sending a shiver racing down her spine. Duke's grip on her hand tightened, reassuring and grounding her amidst the uncertainty. Stay close, he whispered, a hushed urgency in his voice. But the howls grew louder, bouncing off the trees, until it sounded like a pack was surrounding them. Ella could feel panic rising in her throat, threatening to choke her. We need to find shelter, she urged, scanning the darkening woods. Her mind raced to find a safe place, a refuge from whatever dark presence stalked them. Look! Alex called, pointing toward a gap in the trees ahead. A cabin. Hope ignited a flicker in Ella's chest. They hurried toward the dilapidated structure, its frame barely holding together beneath the weight of creeping vines and weathered wood. Pushing through the door, they stepped into the dim interior filled with dust motes dancing in the fading light. The air smelled musty, like forgotten memories, but it was a sanctuary, a break from the chaos outside. Once inside, the door creaked ominously as they barricaded it with a fallen log. Ella glanced around, the sparse furniture offering little comfort. But in that moment, they were safe. For now. Let us catch our breath, Duke said, sinking onto a rickety chair, his chest still heaving. Ella eased against the cabin wall, heart still drumming with residual fear. She stole a glance at Duke, whose eyes glinted with determination even in the shadowy corners. We made it this far, he said, voice firm. And we'll find a way through this too. But what if the storm drives those things here? Alex interjected, still wide-eyed and trembling. Ella's gaze met Duke's. She saw the flicker of understanding in his eyes. We can't let fear drive us apart, she replied, finding her resolve. Together, we're strong enough to face whatever comes next. Outside, the storm continued to rage, the sound of wood creaking and the wind howling around the cabin felt like a heartbeat echoing their own fears. But rather than drowning in terror, Ella felt warmth cascaded through her as she thought of the community waiting for them back in Harmony Springs, the laughter, the kindness, the spirit of resilience. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the cabin as a loose board fell from the ceiling. Ella flinched, but Duke was already on his feet. Stay calm, he insisted, drawing them close. As they huddled together, Ella turned her focus inward, drawing strength from all that had come before the storm, the rescue, the bond forged in crisis. It needed to mean something, it had to offer strength moving forward. Let us talk, Ella suggested, her voice steady. Tell me about the things you love, what drives you to keep going. Duke glanced at her, surprise flickering in his eyes before he nodded. I love gardening. It's where I find peace. Alex chimed in, and I love hiking, being out in nature. It makes me feel alive. What about you, Ella? Duke asked, leaning closer, the trust between them deepening. I love music, she confessed, her heart swelling. I've always dreamed of sharing it with the world. That dream got buried under all the responsibilities. You can still share it, Duke pushed softly, his gaze piercing through potential doubts. You can inspire others. With each story exchanged, the shadows in the cabin flickered away. The fear dulled as thoughts drifted to how their lives intertwined with others, how each of them had something to bring to their community. Suddenly, the howls outside didn't seem as terrifying. Let us create our own shelter, Ella proposed, feeling empowered. Every story from our lives matters. Let us promise to share our dreams once we're out of this. Duke's smile broke through the darkness. I can help with that. The wrestling, the community center, yes. Ella beamed, excitement bubbling up. They spent the next moments dreaming of the future, lighting the room with possibilities rather than fear. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but within that fragile cabin, they built their own sanctuary, a bond that promised hope. And then, a calmness spread over them like the first light at dawn, peeling back the layers of a long, harrowing night. Suddenly, the air felt lighter, and the howls of despair faded into the background, replaced by the echoes of laughter and dreams shared. Just then, a gust of wind pushed against the cabin door, the storm's last warning before its surrender. Ella exchanged glances with Duke and Alex, their confidence reignited. What awaited outside wasn't a monster, and Ella knew that together, they could face any storm. Hand in hand, they stepped out into the light as the chaos finally ceased. The storm had passed, but one thing had transformed forever: a strong community had risen from the remnants of anguish, forging unbreakable bonds in its wake. Together, Ella whispered, looking at Duke and Alex, the sunlight reflecting the determination anew in her eyes. "Let South leave this place stronger than we arrived." Hand in hand, they walked forward into their future, determined to inspire others, heartfelt, brave, and unyielding. This wasn't just survival. This was a beginning. And now, as the sun broke through the clouds, casting warmth into the world, Ella felt hope surge through her. She had found her voice amidst the storm, and it was just the start. Now, it's your time. Subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like for the algorithm and fuel our journey. Comment your feelings about this incredible transformation. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this magic. Only true fans understand the power of community. Let's grow together.